Well, good morning, church. How you guys doing today? Good. Okay, so I was running around. I don't know if you saw me in the last song. I was running around. I'm pulling a small audible. Our third, fourth, and fifth grade. You guys are dismissed. Junior high kids, I'm going to have you stay in service today. Junior high kids, you're going to stay in service today because I really think you need to hear what we're talking about today. And in fact, if you're a junior high kid, I know what happens. You guys roll by and you don't take bulletins. So if you're a junior high kid and I'm keeping you in service today and you're like, what in the world's going on? Do me a favor, raise your hand. Mr. Brock has got some bulletins. He's going to come by because I want you to take notes today on what we're going to be talking about. Is that good? We good with that? Well, I got the microphone, so we have to be good with it, right? Hey, do me a favor just really quickly, even though I got a meme about this the other day as Brock's handing those out, just take a minute to say hi to somebody that's next to you and we'll just get this little stuff taken care of. Say hi to somebody next to you really quick. So greeting time. Let's go. Basil, good morning. How are you? Okay, that's enough. Here's the thing. We've got a lot of material to get through today. They're still going. I released it. We got a lot of material to get through today. And I know some people get very anxious about, or you're going to write it down, especially when I start talking fast. So I'm going to give you a little hint. No pre-peeking, but there's that big section at the bottom, how to solve problems biblically with 10 blank lines. You're like, I got to write all these down that fast? Now listen, I can see you, even if you can't see me, I can see you. The answers to fill in those blanks are on the back sheet. Don't flip to it, just wait. Don't wait, just wait. You can't steal my thunder. I've been praying. I was telling Becky last night, I woke up in the middle of that amazing, beautiful gift of God, that thunderstorm we had last night. Can you get an amen? It felt like I was back in Texas on a spring afternoon. I was just waiting for the tornado sirens to go off. And I woke up, and be honest, and I had the perfect illustration for today's message. Now, this has happened on a couple of occasions. I'm not claiming that God speaks to me through dreams. Like I certainly don't have any prophecies or anything like that. But the Lord will impress upon me in the middle of I'll be dreaming, and then I'll wake up out of a dead sleep, which is not normal for me, and I'll be wide awake, laying in bed with this idea or this thought in my head, and I'm like, okay, so that's a good thing, and I'll say I'll remember that. I won't forget it, and then I fall asleep, and what happens? I wake up the next morning, and I'm like, man, I had the perfect illustration. And Becky's like, why don't you get a little notepad and a pen? Well, here's the problem. My normal handwriting is like chicken scratch. I can't read it anyways, but now you want me to write something down at 2 o'clock in the morning with no contacts. And I can't pick up my phone and open it up, because if I pick up my phone and open it up, I see the notifications and the blue light and all those kinds of things. And so I've been praying all morning that God would give me the perfect illustration for today's message, and He did it. We sat back there as they were practicing, and I've been praying about it all morning. I was walking around the auditorium this morning praying for you as you were setting in. And so I'm going to make two statements, okay? I'm going to make one statement, and then I'm going to give you the first line on your blank, okay? So here's the thing. Here's my first statement. Here's my illustration for today's service. You guys ready? This is really good. In honor of football, I have a confession to make. I've never been a Cowboys fan. Secretly, I'm a San Francisco 49ers fan. Now, the point on your sheet, your sermon guide right here, the way we live says a lot about the God that we serve. Now, here's the reality. Does anybody believe the statement that I just made? No, you don't, because the way I live, despite Brock back there yelling at me, the way we live says something about the God that we serve. And while it's church and it's a Sunday morning and I capitalize that G, the reality for many of you sitting here today or watching online later today or this week, that God may not be capitalized, may be a little g, because you're pursuing any and everything but the God of the universe. And the way that you live will tell everybody what you're serving. If you remember way back in January 1 when we started this series, we said we were going to walk along with Abraham and we were going to follow his life. And there were going to be a couple of things that we would know about Abraham. And one of those was that he didn't follow perfectly. He messed up all the time, didn't he? Basically, prostituted his wife out twice to save his sorry skin. He didn't follow perfectly, but what we know as we follow his life, if you stand here today in chapter 21 and you look back over the course of his life and you look back to chapter 20 and 19 and 18 and 17 and 16 and 15, all the way back to 12 when we're first introduced to him, you can see that the course of his life tells you the God that he follows. And today in chapter 21, we're introduced, starting in verse 22, to this experience that Abraham has that lives this out. Now, I've listened to about 7 million different people pronounce these names that we're going to pronounce. Abimelech is probably the first one. Now, I've heard Fichel, I've heard Hickel. For that second name, I'm going to go with Pickle this morning. Are we okay with that? All right. Verse 22 of chapter 21, Genesis, and we're going to see this is true for the life of Abraham, that the way that he lived said a lot about the God that he served. At that time, Abimelech and Pickle, the commander of his army, I don't know that I want a general named Pickle, but that's just me, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Now, therefore, swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me. Now, this Abimelech's a smart dude. He's saying, getting Abraham to swear that he wouldn't deal falsely just with him, but he says, also with my descendants or with my posterity. He said, you're going to be honest and deal with all of my generations with honesty. But as I have dealt kindly with you, so you will deal with me and with the land where you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. The way that we live says a lot about the God that we serve. Abimelech watched Abraham sojourn and wander through it and watched God continue to bless him over and over and over again. So much so that when he still doesn't have possession of the land, he's not a king. He's got somewhat of a household army. He's got some household guards. We remember the 247 men or so that he took when he went to go rescue his cousin Lot when he got captured in that raid in the battle of the 27 armies, or however many it wasn't 27, but you guys remember what I'm talking about. In watching the course of Abraham's life, Abimelech, this king, saw and understood the kind of God that he served. And so then it begs the question, when people look at us, what do they see? They may have an impression of how we were raised. They may have an impression of what football team we're actually a fan of. Right? They may have an impression of whether we like sports or not. They may have an impression of how chaotic our life is. They may have an impression of how much money we have or don't have. Like it or not, our human response is to judge people based on what we see. That's why we have cute little sayings, don't judge a book by its what? Cover. Because you never know what's inside that book. It could be the most tattered, ugly book, but inside could be a wealth of material, a gold mine of wisdom and knowledge. We say it, right? It's a cute saying. Don't judge a book by its cover, but in practice, it's a little trite because we all do it. Junior high kids, you do it. You know you do. High school kids, you know you do. During that first song in the back, I was walking across the back, and none of you guys saw this, but I was kind of right over there, and to the chagrin of my son, I started to gritty because it was so good, man. I just had to dance back there, and the back row of guys all laughed at me, and they all secretly judged me, and that's okay. I forgive you. We're sitting in a movie theater, and 5 rows in front of us, a teenage boy picks his phone out of his pocket and opens it up, and the bright blue screen lights up the movie theater like the shining of a noon sun. And we all judge him, and what do we say? Man, I wish his parents would have taught him manners. You know, you don't take your phone out in the middle of the movie theater. You just ruined my experience. Man, that 30-second interaction, we've made a lot of assumptions there, haven't we? We've assumed that his parents haven't taught him manners. We don't know. We can't judge his life. We've assumed that there wasn't something important that he was checking on. Perhaps his mother's in the hospital fighting a disease. Maybe her body is ravaged by cancer, and this is just a moment for him to escape with his friends and enjoy a movie and just take a break. But he's so nervous about his mom that his phone buzzes, and he just has to pull it out and check. We like to say, don't judge a book by its cover, but we do. What do our 30-second interactions say about us? What do they say about what we believe? What do they say about what's important to us? Now listen, I get this, right? Like, and this isn't meant to feel heavy. This is just meant to make you think. None of us are perfect all the time. Husbands, don't jab your wives too hard in the side. Wives, don't jab your husbands too hard in the side. None of us are perfect. A couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of taking Harper fly fishing. I think maybe I shared part of this story with you. How old is Harper? 11? She's 11. She caught her first trout on a fly rod this summer. That's pretty impressive, y'all. Cooper, you were 17 when you did that? Shots fired. Now, a couple of weeks prior, Cooper and I had went to the same river. It's not in north. It's in kind of central Idaho. It's not too far away. It's about an hour and 30 minutes away. And Cooper and I, over the course of 24 hours, maybe. No, we didn't even. I mean, we caught like 50 or 60 fish. I caught 50 or 60 fish. Cooper caught like 2 or 3. Let's be honest. I'll pay for that one later. But we caught a ton of fish, and the water was beautiful, and it was perfect. And then a couple of weeks later, I took Harper, and we went fishing too, and I was amazed at the difference in the river. Where when Cooper and I fished, the edge of the river was this yellow volleyball court line right here. When Harper and I went, it was the front row. The water had receded that much, and the reason that I'm telling you that is because even though we were there, and Harper said, "Dad, this doesn't look like the same river. What's going on? This doesn't look like the pictures that you took with Cooper." We were able to stand back and look, and we could see the banks of the river and where the water had previously flowed. You can tell the course of a river because it flows in the same place year after year. Some years the water swells and we have an incredible snowpack, and the water goes 10 or 15 feet beyond. Some years it's not quite as much, and it's a drought season, and the river's smaller. But what you can see over the course of the life of a river, from its headwater to where it empties, you can see where that river's run. Some years it makes a mistake and it gets too big and overflows. Some seasons it's not quite as much and it shrinks down. And it's the same for you and I. Some seasons we're in excess and there's a lot, and we swell. I'm not talking about how I look right now. Just forgive me. And in some seasons, there's not quite as much, and maybe we make a mistake, and there's sin in our life, and we're not pursuing God the way that we should, and there's what feels like a spiritual drought. But what you can see over the course of our life is one who follows Jesus. And so you may have a 30-second interaction where you're waiting for that person in front of you to turn left, and they just won't turn left. And you lose your cool. You may have that 30-second interaction with your spouse where you're wanting to go weed eat on a Saturday morning, and you go to start the weed eater and there's no string, and you're looking everywhere, and you're calling your son, "Where did you leave the weed eater string?" And he goes, "Dad, I didn't leave it anywhere. I didn't use it last." And you're stomping around in the garage trying to find the weed eater string so you can just weed eat. And your sweet wife walks in and says, "I can sense something's wrong. Can I help you?" And you say, "No." Quietly, she walks away. And then you go, wait. Come back. "Yes, you can help me. Find the weed eater string." And she goes, "Is it this red stuff that's sitting right at your feet?" And your response is not Christ-like in the least. Now, I'll tell you what, God just gives them to me. It's because I'm Man, I'm sorry. And you can have those 30-second interactions with your spouse. You can have them with a complete stranger. But what does the course of your life speak to? From beginning to end, and maybe you didn't have a very good start. That's okay. I didn't have a good start either. I probably had the worst of all starts. Maybe you didn't have a very good middle, and that's okay. I have friends who didn't have a very good middle. Maybe you're in junior high and you're just trying to figure out what life has for you. That's okay, man. God's got something bigger for you than you could ever hope and imagine. He has a hope and a peace for you. He has a plan and a purpose for your life. I'm excited to see what the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years says about you and I. Our life illustrates a lot about us. As humans, we have a tendency to put out what's put in, right? We get this. It's instinctual. Some poor kids are Cowboys fans because their dads are Cowboy fans. For those of you that have been with us for a while, and I use it as an example because, man, I'm just so messed up. I'm like Abraham. I don't follow perfectly, but, man, I try to follow. I had a season where, and for those of you that are new, like I had a season where I lost like 115 pounds. I used to be a big guy. And I got like really, really skinny, and I put weight back on. Man, it's a direct correlation to junk in, junk out. We get this, right? We understand it instinctually. If you don't ever work out, you're going to struggle. If all you eat are ho-hos and ice cream, you're going to look like me eventually. Our life says a lot about the God that we serve. Our life speaks volume. We serve a God of mercy. Does your life speak mercy or does it speak judgment? We serve a God of love. Does your life speak love or hate? We serve a God of order. Does your life speak order or chaos? I got to get going here. That next spot on your sermon guide, the way that we respond to problems affirms the way that we live. The way that we respond to problems affirms the way that you really want to see how a person is. Look at them under pressure in the middle of trying to solve a problem. You will get a real life, a real-time view for how somebody actually is. Now, again, you could have 30-second interactions where it's not that great, and I have them, you have them, we all have them, but overall, how do we solve problems? What does that look like? Abraham has one with Abimelech. There's this well, and starting in verse, we're not going to read it, but starting in verse 25, that Abraham digs, but it's seized, and Abraham swears, he goes, this is my well, and they have this conversation, and there's a trade, and Abraham swears that he gives him 7 ewe lambs. And Abimelech says, what are these for? And he says, this is proof that this is mine. I dug it with my own hand. And so we have this idea of solving problems. And how do we solve problems in a godly way, in a godly fashion, like Abraham did right here? He did it in the past when he was trying to figure out how to split the land up between he and Lot. And so I just have a question, like, if you knew how to solve problems in a godly way, would that be applicable to something in your life right now? Raise your hand if you got a problem right now and you're like, I would like to know how to solve that. This half of the room is messed up. You guys are good. All right, let's just dive in it really quick. We got to get going. We got 10 things to break down here. The way we respond to problems affirms the way that we live. We're going to talk about how to solve problems biblically. Junior high kids, everybody look at me. If you're in junior high or high school, look at me. You're going to have a problem tomorrow. It doesn't matter. It could be with the teacher. It could be with another student. It could be with a coach. It could be with a teammate on a team. You're going to have a problem. And it doesn't matter if you go to a public school, a private school, or if you're homeschooled, you're going to have a problem. And if you're homeschooled, you're probably going to have a problem with your mom at least. Yeah, can I get an amen, moms? You know what I'm talking about. So how do we deal with problems in a godly way? How do we biblically solve problems? The first one is this: we keep Jesus at the center. Obviously, this is fundamental to solving any problem you might have, whether other people are involved or not, like a financial problem or an argument with a friend. Keep Jesus at the center. Jesus, after washing the disciples' feet in John 13 and right before his arrest, says this, "For I have given you an example that you should also do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed, but blessed are you if you do these things." Keep Jesus at the center of any problem you have, whether it's with another person, financial, is the business problem, or whatever. Keep Jesus at the center is the very, very, very first thing that you have to do to solve a problem. The second one is easy to do if you do the first one. But the second one might be the hardest part of solving problems biblically, and it's this: you have to humble yourself. Whoo, come on now. We know that's hard, but if you keep Jesus at the center, it's easier to humble yourself. You want to know what happens to a proud person or one that is full of pride in their heart? Proverbs 12:15 says this, "The way of a fool is right in his own wise, but a wise man listens to advice." You want to know if you're prideful or not? You just make decisions on your own, or do you go seek godly counsel? Do you go find evidence from other people that are believers of Jesus who the course of their life, like that riverbed, has shown you that they follow God, that they're going to give biblical, godly advice? I said, humble yourself might be the hardest. I might have lied at church on Sunday. Actually, I think the next one might be the absolute hardest part of solving problems biblically, because it goes against everything that we have instinctually in our heart and our spirit. But if you want to solve a problem biblically, you have to go towards conflict, not away. This is really, really hard. It's not intrinsic in you and I, because it's ingrained in us from the fall, right? We read in Genesis 3:8, "And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden." This is Adam and Eve. "In the cool of the day, and the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord from among the trees because they were naked." They ran away from conflict. They didn't want to deal with it. They ran away from their problem, and that's the worst way to solve a problem. You have to deal with it head on. Jesus did not run away from conflict in his life. He ran towards the cross for you and I. We started running in the garden. We've been running ever since. Moses ran away, David ran away, Peter ran away. Jesus ran, but he ran to the cross. He didn't run away from his problems. You guys remember that? Oh man, it was like, I just discovered it because I'm like 10 years behind being cool. Like cool stuff happens, and then I discover it 10 years later. You guys remember that maybe, I don't know if it was like a Facebook thing or an Instagram reel. I'm pretty sure it wasn't a TikTok thing because I don't think TikTok existed back then. But you remember a little kid that was arguing with his mom and said, "Linda, listen, Linda, listen, Linda, listen." You guys remember that? I just discovered that like 2 months ago. I know. I'm 10 years cool. I've discovered everything. But listen, the next step to solving problems biblically is you got to do like the little kid said. You got to listen. You got to be quick to listen, slow to speak. Listen, Linda. Listen, Linda. If you're in the middle of a problem, if you can't remember anything, if you don't remember anything else I say, remember this. If you're in the middle of a problem, just remember that little kid, but just put your name in instead of Linda. Listen, Rob, listen, Brock, listen, Brock, listen, Jason, listen. There's a reason, right? It's why he gave us 2 of these and 1 of these. Be quick to listen. Next, we take responsibility for our part and we apologize. We all have a part in the problem. The next biblical step is to take responsibility, own it. Quit pointing at other people for the problems in your life and own your part of the issue. It's garbage to blame everybody else. They may have part of the issue, but take responsibility for your part and apologize for what you've done. If you miss an appointment, I'm sorry I missed the appointment. Forgive me. You're forgiven. Awesome. If you don't pay a bill back or you don't return a loaned tool back in time, apologize for your part. You get called on something. If you're at fault, you're at the issue, apologize. Take responsibility. Quit blaming other people for your mess ups. I just applied the next step to you. Speak the truth in love. When it comes time for you to share your side, speak with kindness. Resist your human nature to vent or retaliate for your hurt. Carefully choose the words that you're going to say so you can communicate in such a way that it creates help and doesn't destroy. Your goal in any moment should be to build up, not to tear down. Solving problem or conflict doesn't have to mean that you win, that you're right, they're wrong. You can both be wrong, you can both be right. Your goal should be to build up, not tear down. Ephesians 4:29 says this, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for the building up of others according to their needs, so that it may benefit those who listen. The next step is this. You have to forgive freely. Colossians 3:13 says it this way, bear with one another and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave. And over all of these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. And Jesus even said it, right? He says it, I think it's in Matthew. I may be misquoting, but I'm not going to give you the exact reference, but he says, if you're at the altar sacrificing and you remember that you've wronged a brother, what does Jesus say to do? Leave the sacrifice and go find. Man, it would have been a perfect timing if somebody would have gotten up to go to the bathroom right then. If you're sitting in worship service and you're praising God and you're like, oh my goodness, I wronged that person, you should get up and leave. Go find that person. Make restitution. Own your part. Apologize. Forgive freely. That's actually the next step, is make restitution. Exodus 22:3, it's this biblical concept of restitution. It says that you make right whatever is wronged. If you've broken something, you fix it better than it was before. If you took something, you pay back what was taken. If you told a lie, bring a correction to any wrong information you may have spoken. Ask your brother or sister, if you're in an argument with somebody, what can I do to make this right? How can I help solve this problem? The next to the last step, I think this is number 9 if I haven't skipped any. Am I right? Are we on number 9? Man, we're moving along. Whew. Worship team, get ready. Get help if needed. None of us are perfect. None of us can solve these problems on our own. Go find a godly brother or sister that you can bring along to help solve the problem. Now, what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to bring that person along and then spend 5.5 months gossiping about the issue. Bring that person in, tell them what the problem is, ask for their help. It's this beautiful thing called mediation. If Tanner and I have an issue and we can't figure it out, and we're at each other's throats proverbially, and we can't figure it out, we can't solve the problem. We've done all of these other steps. We've spoken the truth in love, we've apologized, but we still can't get over it. We go to Vinny and go, Vinny, dude, we need you to mediate something for us. We bring in a godly man that we trust. And we explain the situation. We explain it all out. And Vinny, not setting and pronouncing in judgment, but gives us his biblically based advice on how we should move forward. And then we have to agree to accept it. And then we apply the last part, and that's walk it out. We just live out together the solved problem. It doesn't mean that the tension's always going to be released. It doesn't mean that there's not going to be tension, or it might be difficult to be around one another or be around that person in the future. That's still the case. It could still be difficult to be around that person. Sometimes it's your own guilt that brings it up, right? Like I guarantee you, if Becky and I walk into the garage together, I'm going to think about what happened yesterday, and it's going to be a struggle for me for a moment. But then we walk it out together. She's like, I forgave you. It's okay. Quit beating yourself up. She says it to me all the time. Quit beating yourself up. You walk it out together. with a fellow brother or sister in Christ, and you continue to apply that idea of forgiving freely, the worship team is going to come up. They're going to lead us in a song. But here's what I want you to think about as they come up to lead us in this song. Is there somebody, is there something, is there a situation, is there a place in your life right now that you've got an issue? That you need to go to somebody and you need to say, you know what? Man, dude, I have harbored this and I'm sorry. Would you forgive me? And do you need to forgive somebody? Because, listen, everybody look at me. The way you live says a lot about the God that you serve.